is Swee Chee, president of Emerson Process Management, China. You might not be familiar with the company's name. However, it is everywhere. 1/3 of the power plants in China use their equipment. The majority of their clients are multinational and national companies like Sinopec, Bayer, BASF, and ExxonMobil. Mr. Li will tell you how important the China market is.
When there is a will, there's a way. If you win in China, you will win in the global market.
Mr. Li is the first Malaysian to receive Shanghai's prestigious Magnolia Gold Award. And he has witnessed many changes in this city during the last 20 years. Stay tuned. Mr. Li, welcome to our show.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation because I've tracked Emerson Process Management's successes for many years. And of course, it hit some rocky years in the early 2000s, but it's recovering from that. Now, my first question is, Emerson Process Management is a B2B company, so that might be confusing for some of our audience members. They may not know specifically what you do. So could you give us a few examples or case studies to help them understand what it is you do in your day-to-day operations and how you help to make their lives better?
Sure, Stephen, I'll be glad to. First of all, let me introduce Emerson. Emerson is a company that is more than 100 years old. It is US-based. Actually, it is a St. Louis-based company. Emerson has many business platforms. Today, I represent Emerson Process Management, which is one of the business platforms that represent about 31% of Emerson overall business. What does process business do? We actually provide the automation solutions that helps the companies or the particular processing plant, maybe refineries, power plant, or petrochemical plants, to run their plant efficiently and safely. So what do they do? If you really want to bring it to the day-to-day life, the bottle that you hold in your hand when you drink either Coke, mineral waters, or some beverages, that bottle most probably is made by our technology. Or the car that you drive, inside there are a lot of materials. Most probably these materials have been produced with the help of Emerson technology.
Founded in 1890, Emerson is a global leader, providing solutions for customers in industrial, commercial, and consumer markets around the world. The annual revenue for 2012 was about $24 billion. Let's talk about the specific products. How large are they and how small are they? What's your largest, what's your smallest product?
We sell product as small as pressure transmitters, flow transmitters, or level transmitters.
And these would be things, I guess, along a pipe. So as the oil or the water or the chemicals are flowing through the pipe, this is measuring the flow speed and aggregating that data or sending the data to a place.
Right. Okay. This is what we call a measure and analyze equipment. Okay. So they are basically mostly single point measurements, or some are multi-point measurements.
So these are small, very small sensors, very small.
These are like the 5 sensors of a human body. Then the second part of a business are the control and advice. Control and advice are what I call the distributed control systems. These are the brain. It's like a brain in a human being. So with the signals that we receive from the sensors, we will process those signals, and we will take the necessary actions either to increase the efficiency, increase the productions, or reduce the emissions.
So what you're saying is it's intelligent production in a way.
Absolutely. This is what we call the digital plant in the future. It means that all these signals will be going through between the sensors and the systems digitally. And lastly, that these signals need to be executed. So whatever action that was decided by the control system to be taken will be sent to what we call the control valves that will activate the on-off of the valve, or the flow of liquids, or the heating of a furnace to control the temperature, the flow, or the pressure of the process. That is how it all works together to comprise what we call digital plant architectures for the customers. Well, Stevens, as I mentioned to you, what you see here is what I call a distributed control system, the DCS. It's like a brain. So the flow meters, the transmitters that you see are like your fingers and your feet. They're actually sensors the signals, the signal either is pressure, temperature, flow, or level, and this signal will be sent to a control system, the distributed control system, DCS, and it's like a brain. It will process the signal, and in this case, this is the ovation system. It is controlling a power plant. And to give you a data, 1/3 of the power generating plant in China are controlled by this machine, 1/3. And we make sure that this power plant runs efficiently and runs smoothly and also environmentally free of releasing the toxic gases. Maybe look a little bit secret, some of the nuclear plant in US actually controlled by the similar control system as well.
What's your largest product? Okay, the smallest one may be a little valve sensor. What's your largest product?
Well, our biggest product actually are our control systems. So in terms of size
yes,
per order, so we do get many orders for our smaller products. So eventually they add up to be a sizable business. But in terms of single order, we do get huge order for our control systems. I mean, I'm talking about from a few $100,000 to few tens of $1 million in the control systems.
And this is for one product or one piece of equipment.
What I call the control system product is not a product, but this is a solution. This is a system solution because it involves hardware, software, engineering, and also some of the application.
I think I have a bigger picture now of what Emerson Process Management can offer to your customers. And for our audience members watching at home, they might not understand why a little valve like that would be important on a pipe in a series of pipelines in a large facility. But I guess it would be so that they could run 24 hours, 7 days a week. And if they can monitor that flow and if they can monitor all of the machines at the same time, uptime is higher and human personnel perhaps is lower. Now you don't have to have an actual employee standing there monitoring. You've got this sensor that's sending the information to the computer system. So this is also a long-term relationship then with many of your customers. Is that right? It's not just the products that you offer them, but you can also offer them how to understand the products and the data that they're collecting and also the production that they're going through. You can help them forecast, perhaps.
Absolutely. These are, Stephen, these are big investment. When a company decided to invest in the refinery or petrochemical complexes, we are talking about billions of dollars of investment. And they absolutely want to operate and run those facilities at the optimum level and produce as much as possible in order to gain back their return of the investment so that they do not have to shut down in a 2 to 3 years period. They can extend the shutdown in a longer period.
And you're talking about billions of dollars of investment, but also time as well. I'm sure your clients don't have a quick time frame in mind. They're looking at the next 20 years, 30 years, 50 years down the line as they're developing new oil refineries or perhaps water utility centers and things like that. So you're probably a part of the phase 1, phase 2, phase 5, phase 10. Is that right?
Well, we try to get involved as much as possible because you know that it is a competitive market. So we do have good competition out there who always wanted to take the business from us. But in order to keep ourselves going, we have to do better and more cost-effective every time.
To the multinationals from all over the world, China is definitely a huge market. However, existing business models from abroad might not always be suitable here. Emerson Process Management has a proven track record to show its expertise and professionalism in the automotive industry, but they still need to make adjustments for local, national clients. Okay, now speaking of customers, you mentioned these state-owned companies. I understand that Emerson Process Management actually has 3 sectors. So you have some state-owned companies, you have some multinational companies, and then some private Chinese companies as well. What is the difference in working with these 3 different groups of clients?
When Emerson first entered into China, majority of our customers are state-owned companies, and also another part of it are the multinationals company that enter into China. And we work closely with them. So as time goes by, as China becomes the manufacturing base for the world, a lot of these materials that is required to support the manufacturing or the factory of the world has been established more and more private-owned companies start to establish their chemical plants or their industries. So because of what we have done in China with the state-owned enterprises, as with the multinationals, we become well-known in those who are in the industry or in the process automation industry. Therefore, we also start to serve them using the same technology that help them to also produce efficiently and also reduce the emissions.
I would imagine most of your profit would come from the large projects, and small customers, you wouldn't have the time. But how do you manage that?
Well, it is a good lesson for Emerson. As we enter into China and learn about the China market more, we realize that sometimes the products that is produced globally might not be suitable for some of the smaller enterprises. So we actually started an E&D, engineering development activities in China, have made majority of the functionality, but in terms of cost position, able to support that small and medium-priced enterprises that are privately owned, and they can enjoy the same technology and innovations that Emerson has.
Due to lower labor costs in China and other Asian countries, many multinationals are willing to move their manufacturing base to this part of the world, but not many are willing to move their R&D businesses here. Emerson Process Management adopts a different approach. Working with local experts and clients, the company is able to provide more customized services and products. Read about the history, and as Emerson Process Management came to China, one of their growth models was mergers and acquisitions. Does that still happen today?
Yes. If you look at the business unit within process management, a lot of them came to Emerson family through acquisitions, because we are able to find the number one or number two players in a particular field, and then bring them into Emerson family, and then operate them as one. So, for example, we actually acquired a company like Rosemount in the 70s and Fishers in the 90s.
And those were local companies at that time, or were those?
Those are pretty much a U.S. company.
Okay.
Yeah.
Smaller that had already entered China. Were they already here, or were they overseas?
They are a global company as well. I mean, that some of them are U.S. based, but because they become part of Emerson, so Emerson able to bring them into a much more global platform.
But actually, I'm interested in knowing if you've acquired any Chinese companies.
Yes, Stephen. As a matter of fact, one of our business unit basically is the regulator business unit. As they enter the China market, they find that they cannot be competitive. And one of the strategy is go out and look for a good Chinese company and make it as good as Emerson and be competitive as well in the player market. So we do have one that we acquired about 7-8 years back in southwest of China. And that company has turned out to be a jewel for us, because we are able to really integrate the company into our culture. Therefore, it is a good piece of acquisition for us, and we are making a lot of money out of it.
In 2013, a record high of about 7 million Chinese students are graduating from universities. And the job market they face will be extremely competitive. Strangely, at the same time, companies are complaining that they cannot find suitable employees. It is a serious dilemma facing China's current job market. I understand that you've worked with Shanghai Jiaotong University for a number of years, not just with their students and recruiting, but also with some of their faculty and staff. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. We like to work with university because as we grow in China, we need to bring in the good people into our company. And it is always joyful to go out to the university, work with the people, and hire the brightest students from them to come and join the company. And we need to compete for those talents. And we did that by working with the universities, by giving them scholarships, by taking the students as our interns so that they know us better and we get to know them as well. And lastly, we're working with the faculty members to create courses that will teach them the latest technology in the process automation, so that the students, when they graduate from the university, they get the latest technology knowledge so that they will not be fall behind. And we love to work with university. In fact, we work with university in China, all over China, depending on which location you're in. As south as Guangzhou, Shenzhen, as west as Xi'an, Chengdu, even Urumqi.
I think that the Emerson put a lot of the efforts to training our new staff because our business is a B2B business. It's not easy for a new staff to be assimilated in a whole organization. So there will be a whole 1 year programs for the new staff, including the orientation, including technical training, and also some of the softer skill, leadership skill trainings that the people should be equipped. Normally will be average, the totally high will be the 300 people every year, but for some the peak time will be the 400 to 500, maybe the 2 years ago we hired.
Well, let's transition now to Emerson Process Management's history here in China. I understand that you came in 1979, and that was just at the beginning of the reforms and opening up.
Yes, Emerson entered China through what we call technology transfer. Back in the 79, one of our business unit, Rosemount, actually came into China and transferred the technology of making the blue transmitters. At that time, it's called the 1151 transmitter technology into Xi'an Instrument Company.
And this was for factories and refineries?
Yes, this transmitter today is the de facto standard transmitters for a lot of the refineries and petrochemicals, as well as power plant in China.
What was being used before that?
Before that, the technology used was pneumatic technology. It is not the electronic transmitters. So in this industry, they have gone through many, many changes. In the early days, it's manual. Everything is controlled by manual. Then they come the pneumatic technology. In the 70s, we start to introduce the electronic transmitters. So those are the technology transfer. Of course, today, Emerson introduced wireless transmitters. The wireless technologies were introduced into China 5 years ago, and it's taking off really, really well.
Can you comment on China's process and automation industry in terms of industry development and competition? What companies specifically are your competitors?
Process automation is a global market. I say that because the technology involved, the innovation involved is huge, and you need a lot of investment to bring up the technology. Therefore, the competition that we see globally are the same competition that we see in China. On top of that, we do have a few Chinese companies that are emerging, that can be our potential customers.
Like smaller, medium-sized companies? Or are they large? I mean, they're not as large as Emerson Process Management, I would imagine.
Our CEO ever mentioned this to us. He said that in order to win in the global market, the battleground is in China. So in other words, if you win in China, you will win in the global market, because it is a tough market in China. Global competitions plus local competition. We are doing well, but we don't sit on our laurel. We always constantly reinvent ourselves to do better. If we are better than ourselves every day, I'm sure we will be better than our competition.
But what are the other dangers or the pitfalls that companies may encounter where they won't be in the number one spot or the number one position here in China? I mean, if that's true, that if you win in China, then you win in the world, then how do you secure that number one spot?
So like I mentioned, that it is a global market. Therefore, our competition came from the USA. We have a couple of companies that come from US, and we have companies that come from Japan. We have very, very strong competition come from Japan, and a few big ones came from Europe. All our competition look at Emerson as their competitor because we play in most of the arena in the process automation field. Therefore, in order to be number one, we need to be good in every product line, every industries, and every solution that we provide. The product, the technology, as time goes by, you might have a 2 years advantage. Let's say wireless technology. We might have 3 or 5 years advantage. But I believe that one day the competition will catch up. Because I look at the mobile phone. That's what is happening. Motorola used to be number one. Nokia, now who else?
And then Apple entered the market.
Absolutely.
We all said they're crazy, they'll never sell a phone, and they did. Now you said earlier that China and India are two of the lower cost markets when you look at the global markets. Do you see China increasing with these labor costs? Has that affected Emerson Process Management in China?
Yes and no. Like I said, yes, if you are labor-intensive type of market, means that if you hire a lot of people to make a particular product, then you might be impacted by this cost. But if you're a company that constantly automate your process, means that today it takes 10 people to manufacture a product A. If you can use some smart way and not just using 10 people, but use 1 people to manufacturing 2 different type of product by using automation, then you would have a cost advantage. Then you have a productivity gain. We are an automation vendor or supplier, and we constantly look at how we can automate and do things differently. So even though labor cost is increased, but we want to increase the productivity even faster in order to overcome the cost inflation.
So what you're saying then, the labor cost, if they can produce more, then it's justified. And also you're looking at resources in China as well. So a lot of your clients aren't going to move to the other countries because you're actually doing those services and products here in China. That market in a sense won't change, but that will be a competitive scene as we look to the future.
We actually come into China mainly because of the market. Of course, China is also pretty competitive, in the early days without the inflation. As China inflation becomes to rise, but because we are in China for China, we will continue to find ways to improve ourselves, to stay competitive in China so that we become relevant in China for the market. We cannot leave China because China is a huge market. Like I said, anybody that wins in China will win globally. So we continue to stay ahead in China, to do things differently, to move more E&D, engineering development activities into China so that we become relevant in the China market and we can be competitive, and hopefully we will stay number 1 for a long time.
Emerson Process Management has significant business in China's power and oil industries. So looking ahead, what is the growth potential in the energy industries in China?
Majority of business, if you look at the industries, coming from chemical, refining petrochemical, oil and gas, power, food and beverages, and others industries like metal and minings, we believe that China development and growth depending on energies. So they will continue to find new sources of energies to power the giant growth for China. And Emerson is always with China in this area. For example, in the offshore production platform, we are very much involved in their, not just the shallow water production, as well as the deep sea productions. In the onshore productions, we are involved in their pipelines, in their gas gathering, in the LNG that they bought from overseas. Emerson is there to help them in the receiving terminals to bring the LNGs to the customers. As well for the West East pipeline, where the gas have been pumped into the city gates, Emerson is there to help them to regulate the pressures so that they have the right pressures at the city gate to supply the gas to all the users in China.
When it comes to energy, I know a lot of our audience members are worried about pollution. Can you address that?
Sure. This is the challenges for the industries. When you have processing industries, that processing coal or even making polysilicon for the solar power, it involves a lot of pollutions, emissions, and all that. What Emerson does is that we can help to minimize those emissions by monitoring the gases that is released to the air, by controlling the flue gas in a power plant so that we can minimize the emissions. And also we help the customer to monitoring the toxic gas that is released to the atmosphere so that they can shut it down if they exceed certain limit. So we are there to provide technology to not just control the emissions, but also to monitor them.
Swee Chee was born in Malaysia, and his ancestry is from China's Hainan Island. On the one hand, you could say he's a typical expat working for a multinational company. But on the other hand, you could say, in terms of his ethnicity, that he is returning home. Mr. Lee, let's talk about your personal life now. I understand that you speak fluent Mandarin. Is that something that you learned in Malaysia or spoke with your family growing up?
Oh, Stephen, I love to talk about my personal experience. I'm a Malaysian, as you can know. I grew up in Malaysia, went to Singapore for my degree. I had a degree in engineering. And in my education in Malaysia, we are asked to study 3 languages. So first, we have to study English, and of course, our national language, Malay, as well as our mother tongue, Chinese. So I did study Chinese when I was very young.
When was your first trip to Shanghai?
I came to Shanghai in 1991 as my business trip to participate in a trade show in Shanghai, actually. And I can really see the changes in Shanghai. It was just amazing.
20 years you've been here now, is that right?
I've been here 20 years, but I left 2.5 years back to Malaysia. Yeah.
Okay, but over 20 years you've
Right.
experienced Shanghai. When were the golden years for you here, or have they happened yet?
The golden years, every year is a golden years for me in Shanghai because I got to see different things. In fact, living in Shanghai in the beginning was tough for us and my family. It takes them a while to adjust. When I first came to China, we still used FEC, foreign exchange certificate. It was just amazing to see the changes in China. It just never a dull moment in China. In fact, personally, I really enjoy it because being an ethnic Chinese,